Welcome back. This is part 3 of our mini lectures for Module 8, opioids. We will be talking about use and misuse, or tolerance and withdrawal of opiates. So it's important that we continue to make this distinction between physical dependence and addiction. Any human taking opiates around the clock for more than a week or two is going to develop a physical dependence on the substance. Your body will adapt to the use of opiates. This is not the same as drug addiction. Physical dependence always happens when your body gets used to a substance. It develops a response to kind of mitigate the impact of that substance on your body. It develops a tolerance for it, and then when that substance is taken away, it experiences withdrawal. And there's a video up in this module that really goes into excellent detail about what that looks like with heroin. Drug addiction, generally includes a physical dependence, but it also includes at least one other symptom. So that uncontrolled use, negative consequences, psychological dependence, some kind of cognitive impairment or medical harm. So really, it's just important to keep that in mind as people are prescribed opiates for pain relief, especially after something like major surgery. And so if the person is recovering for a week or two, they may have to taper off of the opiate under the supervision of their doctor, under the supervision of their doctor, but that does not mean that that person has developed a drug addiction. Again, for drug addiction, we would be looking for these other symptoms as well. Okay, so what does tolerance look like with opioid use? Well, it develops pretty quickly. The body is set up to respond to the ingestion of opiates and to compensate for it pretty quickly, especially for the suppression of breathing. So there are different effects that are tolerated at different rates. And the first one to develop tolerance is the suppression of breathing. It's basically your body is like, whoa, oh my God, there's an opiate here. I need to be able to breathe. And so that your body learns to tolerate and to breathe in response to the presence of opioids pretty quickly. And then eventually all of the cells in the body adjust to the presence of the drug. And there's this sensation like if you don't take the substance, then you're not functioning at your normal level. That's sort of the extreme form of tolerance. And that's physiological. There is also behavioral tolerance, or a conditioned response that develops, a learned response. And so it's where the person develops a tolerance to the substance because they use it in the same environment over and over again. And we've talked about this in previous modules. What can happen is the person uses the heroin in the same brown chair in the same room over and over again, and their body learns to adapt to the substance so they can take higher and higher doses. And then they switch out environments and they change environments, and they take the same dose that they would have normally taken, and all of a sudden it's too much and they don't tolerate it as well and they can have an overdose. So there is a real risk of overdose based on this behavioral tolerance phenomenon. And then also overdose can happen when other opiates are combined with other drugs, especially other depressants or sedative drugs, again, due to that depression of the central nervous system, depression of the breathing. Withdrawal, so after tolerance is developed and if dependency is developed, if the opiates are taken away, people do experience withdrawal symptoms. They are feeling pretty miserable, but interestingly enough, they're generally not life-threatening. It can be good to have medical supervision, but again, it's not going to result in death for the most part. Folks report similar symptoms to the flu, so watery eyes, runny nose, sweating, lots of just like body fluids, restlessness, irritability, loss of appetite. Really, at the peak and extreme form, you get this diarrhea as it's sort of withdrawal tends to be the opposite effects of the substance, and opiates make you constipated, so withdrawal is diarrhea. Shivering, sweating, general malaise, or just feeling bad, abdominal cramps, again, due to that digestion, muscle pain, increased pain sensitivity, right? So these are the withdrawal symptoms that are opposite of the short-term effects of the substance. Usually lasts for a few days and then the worst of it's over physically, but the psychological symptoms are far longer lasting. So that dysphoria, feeling like the opposite of the euphoria felt when using heroin, experiencing intense craving for the drug. These are the symptoms that stick around for a really long time and that are usually responsible, or people report them as being responsible for their relapse. The desire to avoid all of this can be a really powerful motivator to continue using opioids, even more so than the feelings of pleasure that are obtained from using the substance. Really just not wanting to go through this can keep someone using for a very long time. And we're going to talk about what happens when you combine opiates with some drugs. One type of effect that you can get when you combine drugs is an additive effect, where if you add drugs together that are from the same class, then what can end up happening is it sort of has this effect where it's intensified. So sometimes their drugs are added on top of each other to get high or to feel that kind of euphoric feeling, or to obtain a greater degree of pain relief, that kind of numbing sensation. And this can be very dangerous, especially if you're adding narcotics on top of narcotics or opiates on top of opiates. So Prince's overdose was due to Percocet and fentanyl, and Philip Seymour Hoffman's overdose was due to heroin and fentanyl. So the combination of two opiate substances, again, the overdose risk is so intense because of that depression of the central nervous system and the slowing down of breathing. Another type of effect that you can get from combining drugs is a synergistic effect. And that's when you add drugs together which belong to different classes, but they have the same depressant effect on the central nervous system. And what that's done is again, it's for the same purpose, to like get a better high or a different kind of high, or to obtain more symptom relief. And so an example here would be an opioid plus benzodiazepine, which could be something like Xanax, an opioid plus Xanax or benzo and alcohol, an opioid plus a sleep drug plus benzo, which would be implicated in the death of Heath Ledger. And you can see actually a classic combination of this, which is Xanax, which would be a benzo, Oxycontin, Klonopin, which is another type of benzo, and alcohol, Oxycontin being the opioid, all taken all together. So they're prescribed to one person, the Xanax, the Oxy, and the Klonopin, and then they're taken on top of a cocktail. And that's what leads to increased mortality among white women, and especially wealthy white women. It's kind of this classic combo. That is very deadly. But in actuality, the most common cause of overdose for folks using heroin is the result of an experienced user taking too much of a single drug, and the single drug being heroin. And this occurs because of behavioral tolerance. So again, what I talked about a moment ago, where the user changes up their environment and their body is not as tolerant of the same amount of drug in the new environment. And so they inject what would have been safe at their old place, but is now no longer safe. Or they somehow get a hold of a drug that is increased strength or purity. So either they have to buy from a new dealer, or their dealer has a new supplier, or they seek out a new form of the drug. Sometimes what happens is someone ODs in the community, and then word gets out, oh, where he got that from, that's the good stuff. Because the idea being that that person overdosed, meaning the drug was extra potent. So then people go out and buy that drug that person died from. Sometimes toxins are added to the street drug, street form of heroin, and that can lead to an overdose. And what else? What also can happen is someone who's relapsed after a period of abstinence. So they go through withdrawal. They are no longer physically dependent. It also means they no longer have the tolerance that they had before. And then when they relapse or resume using, they miscalculate and they use what they would have been able to use previously, and it leads to an overdose.